Later never came. It didn't disappear suddenly. It didn't announce itself as gone. It simply stopped being an option. At first, later felt reliable, like something I could count on, a quiet promise that didn't need to be questioned. There was no urgency attached to it. No pressure to act immediately. Later felt patient, reasonable, safe. So I placed things there. Words I didn't want to rush. Thoughts that felt too precise to release too early. Moments that deserved better timing. I told myself I was being careful. That waiting wasn't avoidance, but consideration. The moment didn't feel fragile. It didn't seem like it needed to be held tightly. Everything around it felt stable. Conversation moved forward. The room stayed balanced. Time kept its pace. Nothing suggested that later was at risk. So I waited. Later allowed me to stay still, without feeling absent. It let me remain present, without stepping forward. I didn't have to choose the exact words. I didn't have to decide when to begin. Later held that responsibility for me. At least, that's what it felt like. The moment continued. Not dramatically, not with consequence. It simply moved forward, carrying everything with it. I remained where I was, watching the space adjust without resistance. The room didn't pause. It didn't look back. It learned how to continue, without what I had placed in later. I noticed how easily it worked, how naturally new topics replaced the old ones, how smoothly attention shifted. There was no sign that something had been left unfinished, and that made waiting easier. Later still felt available. I assumed it would return, in another form, that there would be a second opening, a clearer moment. But later doesn't arrive the way we expect. It doesn't come back, with the same conditions. Time changes the shape of things. Each passing moment quietly alters the context. What made sense earlier no longer fits the same way. I realized this slowly. The words I had saved didn't disappear. They simply became outdated. They belonged to a moment that no longer existed. Speaking them now would have required explanation, not of what I meant, but of why I had waited. That wasn't what I wanted. I didn't want the words to arrive carrying their own delay. So I waited again. Later stretched quietly. It didn't feel like postponement. It felt like patience. Not now. Soon after this. Later didn't feel like a decision. It felt like a condition, a way of staying close to the moment, without fully entering it. I wasn't choosing silence. I was choosing delay. And delay doesn't feel permanent at first. It feels temporary. But temporary things can settle, if nothing interrupts them. At some point, the moment no longer expected my words. Not out of rejection, not out of indifference. It had simply reorganized itself. The room had found its balance. Without them. Speaking now would have felt late. Not wrong, just unnecessary. Like adding a sentence after the meaning had already settled. So I didn't. Later never came. There was no clear moment. When it stopped being possible, no signal that said, this was the last chance. The opportunity didn't close its door. It just kept moving. And I stayed where I was, waiting for something that no longer existed. I noticed how quietly that happened. No tension. No regret at first. Just the calm realization that the moment had passed without needing to be resolved. The world didn't pause to acknowledge it. It continued, adjusting effortlessly. Later didn't leave evidence behind. It didn't explain what it took with it. It simply moved the moment forward until there was nothing left to return to. I thought later would arrive, when things felt clearer, when the timing felt right, but clarity didn't come. Before the moment moved on, it came after, too late to be useful. Later never came, because the moment didn't wait. It trusted me to recognize it when it appeared, and I did. I just believed there would be more time. That belief felt harmless. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It didn't feel like a mistake. It felt like patience, but patience requires an ending, and later never provided one. By the time I understood what later had cost, the moment had already become memory, quiet, unresolved, complete without me. Later never came. And the world continued, learning how to move forward without what I had planned to say. All that remained was the understanding that I had been waiting for a time that was never promised and never arrived.